Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Two former Trump campaign officials turned themselves in this morning. They are the first arrests made in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia probe. We will get reaction from the White House and Capitol Hill coming up. But first, information about the indictments. Former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort surrenders this morning at the FBI field office in Washington, D.C. He and former campaign deputy Rick Gates are the first charged in connection with the ongoing investigation by Special Counsel Robert Mueller. It was launched in May. Questions of collusion between Trump campaign officials and Russia during the 2016 election have clouded the first year of the Trump presidency. But Mueller's probe has cast a wider net, scrutinizing financial and real estate dealings by Trump associates, including Manafort's work for the former president of Ukraine. These initial charges, including conspiracy, do not cover any activities related to the 2016 campaign, but it's possible charges could come later. Additionally, newly unsealed records today show George Papadopoulus, a former foreign policy advisor to the Trump campaign, has pleaded guilty for making false statements to the FBI. A source close to the White House said charges against Manafort and Gates have nothing to do with the president and nothing to do with any relationship to Russia. Manafort and Gates have pleaded not guilty to all charges. Manafort has been released on $10 million bond and placed on house arrest. Gates's bond was $5 million. President Trump says alleged misdeeds by his former campaign chairman took place years ago, and he insists there was no collusion between his 2016 campaign and Russia. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. President Trump is distancing himself from today's charges. At the White House briefing, Press Secretary Sarah Sanders downplayed the development, saying most of the alleged crimes occurred before the aides worked for Trump.
Today's announcement has nothing to do with the president, has nothing to do with the president's campaign or campaign activity. The real collusion scandal, as we've said several times before, has everything to do with the Clinton campaign, Fusion GPS, and Russia.
Mark, let's go back to the Russia investigation. Questions continue about whether the president would fire Special Counsel Robert Mueller. What is the White House saying about that today?
Press Secretary Sarah Sanders says there is no intention or plan to make any changes to the special counsel. She also added that the White House expects the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election to conclude soon. We'll see.
Correspondent Mark Irons at the White House. Thank you, Mark. Those charges are reverberating around the Capitol, and that's where we find Jason Calvi standing by. Jason, how are lawmakers reacting?
Some Democrats say, Lauren, this is just the tip of the iceberg. The Senate's top Democrat says the indictment shows the investigation is progressing in a very serious way. Senator Chuck Schumer says it shows that someone from the Trump campaign was indeed contacted by a Russian official about getting dirt on Hillary Clinton.
The stakes could not be higher. We're talking about the pride and wellspring of our grand democracy, free and fair elections, which have been going on for more than 2 centuries, and were disturbed and adulterated by a hostile foreign power with no good intent for the people of this country.
Still, Republicans cannot escape the Russian investigation. Tomorrow, executives from Facebook, Twitter, and Google will be here to face questions about how to fight Russian online propaganda. It comes as several congressional committees are investigating Russian interference into the 2016 election. Lauren?
You're going to be busy tomorrow, the Russia investigation, but let's go back to that. It sounds like a lot of lawmakers are keeping quiet about this. Is anyone else talking?
A lot of Republicans are keeping quiet. I know many of the Democrats in the House have been tweeting all day about these indictments. But the Republican chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley, is praising Robert Mueller for following a law requiring agents of foreign governments to register with the United States. He said the laws need to be enforced fairly and consistently.
Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi, thank you. Reaction is pouring in from all sides here in Washington on the Russia probe. Representative Adam Schiff is the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee. That panel is also conducting its own investigation into possible collusion with Russia and the Trump campaign. Here's part of what Congressman Schiff is saying about today's charges. These developments will and may have already generated new lines of inquiry for the special counsel and could provide invaluable insights on core issues we are investigating on the committee. Joining us now is Ken Cuccinelli, former Attorney General for the state of Virginia. Welcome back to the program.
Good to be with you.
These indictments led by Robert Mueller reveal what? There's nothing in here from the original intent of the special counsel.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, they really should have been brought by a different prosecutor in the Department of Justice. Mueller should have handed these things over. But let's face it, Manafort and his sidekick here, Rick Gates, they have had years and years of, assuming the indictment's correct, of tax evasion uncovered because he became the campaign manager for the Trump campaign. I know,
in 2016.
That's right.
There's nothing in here about collusion. So what do you think Mueller is doing? Do you think that he's applying pressure on Manafort to help get more information?
Let's start with just the basic truth. It appears to Mueller and the grand jury that these offenses took place, and therefore they're going forward on them. Okay, just basic prosecution. You and I have already commented we think it's outside the jurisdiction of the special prosecutor. That doesn't mean it isn't appropriate to prosecute. So that's one. But two, yes, it is leverage, or it can be leverage if there's anything there to leverage. There's no real evidence, even publicly and speculatively, yet that there is any organized collusion.
And that's exactly what Donald Trump says in his tweet. Sorry, but this is years ago, before Paul Manafort was part of the Trump campaign. But why aren't crooked Hillary and the Dems the focus? What do you think this suggests, this whole report? Does it suggest that he doesn't have anything on collusion?
Well, certainly with respect to Manafort and Gates, it does. There was one other indictment that didn't much get noticed.
Papadopoulus?
Correct. And all it was lying to the FBI. It could be nothing. It could just be lying to the FBI during the course of an investigation, or it could be the first item in a string of items, because he really is a small fry in any theory of Russian collusion. So, but we still haven't seen, we've seen two indictments now, and we still haven't seen any suggestion of actual collusion, not even a hint of it.
At a minimum, do you think that the president at the time, the candidate, used bad judgment by hiring Manafort?
Well, certainly as someone who is involved in that campaign, I worked for Senator Cruz in the latter stages of the campaign. We were all kind of scratching our head. He has worked at this level. I mean, but it's been since 1996. And, you know, unconventional Donald Trump, and they were having their concerns with Corey Lewandowski, so where do you look? With 16 other players on the field, you're not going to necessarily go to one of their teams. So it was unusual, but not beyond the realm of possibility.
Of what happens in these kinds of campaigns.
Exactly.
Because as you just mentioned, that this is from 2006 to 2015. So if he had played in those levels in the late 1990s, he wouldn't have had these sort of these issues.
That's right. Well, he took his business in another direction, as we're now learning.
Yeah, made $18 million according to this indictment. All right, thank you so much for your insights.
Yeah, my
Ken
pleasure.
Cuccinelli.
Good to be with you.
Thanks.